Welcome to Retrained Search, the podcast, where we lift the lid on what it's really like to work retained, discuss the stories we've gathered along the way, and give you all a peek behind the scenes of our amazing community and how they're getting ahead. Hello. Hi, George.
Hello. You all right?
I'm good, yeah. Welcome to our... I can't remember the last time we went live on LinkedIn. It's very exciting. I'm a little bit nerve-wracking.
Over a year and a half ago, I think.
Do you reckon? Yeah, we're doing kind of masterclasses all the time, but never live. So, yeah, it's amazing to have our guests here with us today to talk about a topic that's been more and more prevalent in the last probably 6-12 months for us.
Yeah,
that we feel really passionately about.
Yeah, two of our favourite members, I might have.
Yes, absolutely. Where are they? Are they joining us?
Hello.
Yeah, right on cue.
Right on cue.
Right on cue. There we go. We're like, oh, where are the others? Here you are. Delighted.
I didn't know whether you could see them, so I was thinking maybe it's just me.
Oh, it's brilliant to have you here. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much again for joining us today. It was a pleasure. Yeah, it's really kind of you. So first, the topic we're talking about today is making a shift from contingent recruitment to retained. So firstly, why is this a topic that matters? Why should we be talking about this? I'm going to come to you, Ryan, first. Why do you think this is a topic we should be talking about?
Why retained? Talent, finding people the right opportunities. There's so many different ways to go about it. And speaking for myself, in reflection, perhaps I just became brainwashed that there was only one way to go about it. Contingency. I allowed clients to convince me that retained wasn't an option until I decided to accept that, okay, I don't know how to do this and seek help. And now I can see that people all around the world in the retrained community are doing all kinds of different roles on retained, not just C-suite, engineers all the way up to the enterprise leader and everything in between. So that really opened my eyes to the potential that's there and for people to provide solutions. And as you so well put it, Louise, it's, not just headhunting, but pain hunting, going out there to find problems to solve. There's different ways to do that. It's just a very empowering concept.
And talking of pain hunting, there seems to be quite a bit of that in Japan, Paul, with talent acquisition. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't speak for other markets in detail, but this has always been a candidate short market, and it's not getting any better with the population, declining, other factors. But I think even for a junior search, there's not a lot of candidates, usually that we're looking at. So every employer, I would hazard, is struggles. I mean, even coming out of university, they're having to do, big companies are having to offer more and more to attract these 21, 22-year-olds just to consider them. So, like Ryan said, from right across the spectrum, from junior up to the senior stuff, it's just not enough people.
And before we go any further, I'd love it if you guys would be able to introduce yourselves and your businesses. Paul, tell us a bit about who you are and your business. What do you do?
Thank you. So I started in recruitment here in Tokyo in 2005, and then sort of some side steps along the way. Myself and a couple of business partners started our firm, which is Just Legal, 11 years ago. And as the name might suggest, we just do legal search for clients here, which is law firms, financial institutions, and corporates looking for in-house counsel. But at this point, actually, this month, we're going through some expansion and some more change, and we're going to be slightly rebranding as Just Search Group to add a few more other professional service functions. What we do is it's pretty much all senior. There's a lot of retained work, exclusive work, still some contingent work, and right now it's legal. But the first additional function we're adding is HR, and then we'll be looking at other areas like consulting, advisory, sort of sexy stuff like that.
Amazing.
Very exciting.
Great to see the growth. Yeah. And Ryan, tell us a bit about you and your business.
Yeah, I'm Canadian, but grew up in Japan more than half of my life. And my entrance to the recruiting world was as an intern in 2008, just before Lehman Shock. And that's where Paul must have been one of the first guys I saw walking through the door at that firm.
No way. I was going to ask if you two knew each other. You do know each other.
Yeah, like brethren. And so that environment there really kind of gave me, a very clear picture of what great looks like in recruitment, because we were lucky to be working alongside the founder of the company as well, who was with us on the phones, opening new accounts, etc. That was 2008. Fast forward to now, I've been with RGF Executive Search for 6 years. We're part of Recruit. Recruit has many companies, and we are the brand dedicated to foreign companies in Japan. And that's really what drives recruitment in Japan is the demand for bilingual talent, which is only a sliver of the market. There's 60 odd million people in the workforce in Japan. So a lot of global executives will look at Japan thinking, there must be an abundance of talent there. The reality is that a very small fraction speaks English, and an even smaller fraction has the global mindset that global companies need here in Japan, which creates a lot of pain.
Thank you. Yes, it's such an interesting market. And I've worked in quite a lot of overseas market, and nothing quite as unique as Japan so far. So tell us a bit, if you will, Paul, about how you were working. How were you working with your clients typically, or as kind of standard? What was your kind of go-to model, and what was it like working on that basis?
So it was mainly contingent. This is going back, 10 plus, even 15 years ago. I did my first retained search back in like 2000 and I want to say 6 or 7. And looking back now, and it's easy to say this, but it was really just a contingent process with an upfront fee. It was, I didn't know that at the time. But then fast forward, I would typically do 1, maybe 2 retained searches a year. But again, they were sort of more glorified, sort of almost exclusive searches on a contingent basis. I wasn't applying the same process I do now. I did the foundations course. I think it must have been 3 to 4 years ago. And to be frank, I probably didn't implement everything immediately as much as I should have. And it took another year or 2 to do so. And then so our business is just legal, becoming just search group. But under that, we have another brand called Definitive Consulting, which only does partner searches for law firms here. It's a global brand, but I'm focused on Japan. And when we took on that business here, it was sort of, again, in retrospect, the perfect timing to just shift to retained only. And I spoke with my partners here, and given how time poor I was already then, they agreed that, look, if I'm going to do partner searches, it has to be retained or it doesn't make sense.
So why was that? What do you mean? Why would it not make sense?
Because it's elephant hunting, what I'm doing. It's, the fees are potentially huge. 10 to maybe 20 times what I used to do, which is great if you can land them. But, in the past, I'd done searches which would go on for 12 months, 18 months, only for the candidate to reject an offer for, whatever reason. And you've lost all this time. So, when you can land the elephant, it's great, happy days. But if not, you've just wasted a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So, to justify the energy I was going to be putting into these big deals, I needed a commitment from the client. And then there's other benefits that it brings with, predictability of revenue, things like that. So 2 years ago that started, and it took probably the better part of a year to go fully retained.
Wow.
And here we are.
And here we are. And for you, Ryan, what was it like? What were you doing, and why did you make the decision to make changes?
Yeah, well, coming from the same shop as Paul, we were always taught to punch above the belt, to talk to the decision maker, to talk to the president, ideally. And so that's the level that I've always strived to engage with. But with that comes big fees. But if it's contingency, then, during COVID, I had several instances where I'd have a massive fee that would get to final, only to have the company do a U-turn on entering Japan, or they went through a hiring freeze, restructuring, M&A, whatever. And so I'd have these big, juicy, really exciting deals right at final, my pipeline and forecast looking great, until that email comes and, it's, at best I'd get, thanks for your hard work, but
oh my gosh.
So I knew that I'm putting my heart and soul into these searches. I'm wanting to do it in a structured, systematic way. I'm kind of freestyling it though. And I wanted to be able to go out there and be able to spot when is the right opportunity to sell a retainer. Because sure, it's not the right solution in every single circumstance, but I didn't know how to spot that. I didn't know what those triggers were and how to create that, to create the credibility, showcase track record, and position retained for when it is the right solution, and then how to walk the client through it. And since then, all the golden rules that I've learned through retrained search, it's not just one of those that gets it. It's the full chain. It's like one where there's that saying, we're only as good as our weakest link, or something like that. And I think that's certainly true. The more that I practice the principles of the program, the more confident I am, the better service that I can provide. And strangely enough, I feel like opportunities come to me. And so before starting Retrained, I sort of had the belief that retrained search isn't possible in Japan because clients have told me it's not. But as I start filling my head up with the material and the content in retrained search and engaging with the community and sharing problems that I was having, Jordan remembers some of these specific conversations where I'd show up to a collab call, even without an agenda, and I'd be like, you know what, I should probably ask about that client meeting where I lost control. And then I'd share that with Jordan. He'd give me something to say, like that silver bullet, and I'd be writing it down. And then, several of those conversations resulted in retainers, and one of them a record biggest deal last quarter. So
wow.
I had to get through that pain to want help and then seek help. And these steps helped.
Paul, you've been doing this for a long time, Paul. What stopped you making this step earlier? Why not do more retained earlier?
I think probably all of life, but certainly recruitment it's pretty much all mindset, mindset and work ethic. And I think my mindset wasn't right. I think it was probably, I was too fearful. I wasn't confident enough. And maybe that's, human nature. You've got to sort of do something, or maybe that's just me to know that it works. Yeah. Because now, I remember when I did the foundation school, something Lou said, which at the time I probably didn't. I was like, yeah, whatever. She was like, selling.
Story of my life.
Story of your life.
No, it was selling a retainer is easy. It's the delivery that's the hard part.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh no, delivery. I can do that all day, every day. Give me the work.
Nobody listens to me when I say that until they get there.
Yeah, and then you sell something that's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it was a natural process. My mindset has just shifted along the way to now.
There are a lot of fears, though, aren't there? You talked about there being a lot of fears around retained. And I mean, those are the things that I hear when I talk to people that are struggling with the things that you talk about, Ryan, that are working on loads of stuff and then just having fees just disappear before their eyes, and how frustrating that is. And I asked them, well, why aren't you working retained? Were there fears there for you, Ryan, as well? Were there worries about it?
I didn't know how it worked. And Paul knows how many great people that that I've been around in my career, that we've been around, from since the earlier day. And a lot of them have gone on to establish very successful retained only firms. I worked alongside with them, but for some reason, I just didn't get that piece. I see them selling, I hear about it in the office environment, but I needed to see it in granular detail, step by step, to see, okay, that's how you do it. And so then, the retainers that I was running before the course were never ending. They were a burden. They were stressful. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted more of them, honestly.
Yes, that's so common.
And we don't have a timeline, and we just want to find the best person and all this. And I had to realize that I hadn't diagnosed that well enough in the beginning. I wanted the retainer. But then hearing, the granular detail that the course provides on like what to say in a steering call, and how succinctly Jordan's been able to share exactly what to say in certain circumstances, helped me to see exactly how to do it, and actually how simple it can be when this big goal, filling a retainer, is broken down into tiny steps that are actually very achievable and very practical on a day-to-day basis. So people ask me like, Ryan, are you working harder? And funnily enough, I don't feel like I'm working harder, because I know exactly what I have to do.
Are you enjoying this so far? Don't miss a single episode. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can be part of the conversation that's shaping the future of recruitment. So we dive really deep into the strategies, the stories, and the truth about retained search. So if you want to hear more about it, or you know someone else that needs to hear this, then share it with them. Right, let's get back to the good stuff.
And with you, Paul, like, what, you talked about the mindset piece and how that was a barrier really for you. What's it like for you now then? How is your mindset different to how it was before?
I'm definitely more focused on the customer. I mean, we do a good job, we deliver, the money follows. We shouldn't focus on the money, I think. Often now my client meetings or just calls or lunches, whatever I'm having with clients or potential clients, it's just a natural conversation. And then if there is a problem they have, then it may be that some sort of retained solution, should be something they could think about. But it's almost never me pressing it or saying this is the only option. It's just, look, have you considered it for these reasons? This is where it could help. If we go down this other path, then have you thought about the problems that may arise there? So and that just makes things more fun as well. Instead of going in with some, hell bent on selling something, you're just going in to listen and to find out where their problems are. I guess people would say that's consultative. I don't know, but I think of the customer more first, and I try to highlight where stuff can go wrong.
Yeah, nice. And what's different for you now, Ryan? You talked about the way life was before, and how it sounds a bit like a gamble really on what was actually going to come in and what wasn't, and you're kind of hoping and crossing your fingers and hoping that things kind of come out in the wash. What's different for you now? What's that journey resulted in?
Yeah, well, I mean, I came back from Christmas break having 10 days or so off. The brain was off. Time to switch the brain back on, and where am I again? And then see where I am with the retainers I had going on at the time, and go back into the course. Okay, yeah, that's where I am. So I know that I can switch off and fully switch off on weekends. Rather than being, at like a family day in the park, and I'm wondering if that guy's going to take my offer next week to get that full fee or not. So I feel really empowered. I feel clear. I feel like I can be fully present in what I'm doing, and fully switch off when I'm not at work, and be there, be there for my family, etc. It's really cool to be able to forecast revenue, because I know that when the contract is signed, I know that I'm confident now that I'm going to have a short list to deliver in 4 to 6 weeks. Science. And I'm just getting to the point now where I'm working with resources internally to streamline that, so that inspired by the book, Buy Back Your Time, really to focus on what you love doing and are good at. Like, I love getting on the phone to find those 10 people to ask for referrals, to get those gems that wouldn't come up otherwise, that perhaps have more EQ than the IQ that the search, CVs that wouldn't come up, that only a human network can really manifest. And then have my team doing parts that they love. Like, some of them are really good at sending LinkedIn messages and have great email responses, and others are great at automation and setting up a long listing that works within our realm of compliance. So yeah, it's just really cool to now be like working on the business, whereas last year was like working in the business trying to get the first few
What about the financial impact? Has it had a financial impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, BD was taking me longer than other people in the course, from what I observed. I think I posted like 6 months ago. I had to kind of give myself a pat on the back and be like, keep going, Ryan, just stay going in the same direction. But the clearest way I could put it is, last year I barely hit my target. And this year by Valentine's Day, I hit my target.
Wow.
With some
That's incredible.
Record fees,
I love the fact that irrespective of the market, the challenges are nuanced, right? But the benefits of working retained, I think, are pretty consistent across the board. Like, everyone has the same wins when they make a success of it.
Yeah, it's like a happier life, more time in your mind, and
more time with the family,
forecastable revenue, and then actual financial bottom line. And it's nice that came last from your answer, that I kind of had to provoke that it's your well-being and, your time with your family that came first. And I love that. Are things different for you, Paul, from that perspective? Has there been a financial impact on you making the transition?
Yeah. Just before I answer that, I mean, my wife obviously has been seeing me do this, business for a long time, and forever she would be like, why does it work like this? I don't get it. You work for free. Like, I don't get it. What do you? So when I started like doing more retained work and, talking about it, she's like, well, yeah, I don't understand the big deal. If that makes sense to me. So you sort of need that outside, independent advisor to be like, oh yeah, this system's sort of messed up, isn't it?
It's so messed up. It's so messed up.
And look, only when I'm being a bit cheeky or when I don't know, maybe I just don't care. Clients, a certain type of client will be like, well, no, every other agent works. This is how they work. And I'm like, do you work for your clients for free? And it's really funny to see the reaction. Some people are like, how dare you? And others are just like, very good point. It's a really good point. But yeah, financially, like I don't think I could have shifted to just partner only work without the retained approach. I think I would have given in within a year. From a Japanese point of view, this would, I think everyone here is probably focused on Japan. Consistently my best year before, I'd never cracked 100 before this year, and we're this is our 4th month, and I've already done that and more. We've got 8 months to go, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we had a call. It was only a few days ago, I think, wasn't it? And can we talk about that? I mean, I literally nearly fell off my chair. I had to ask you to repeat yourself about 4 times because I wasn't sure that I'd heard you right. Yeah. Can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the fee was $750,000 US for one deal, and there's other stuff in the pipeline where the fees will be like 60-70 million yen, but this stuff takes like a year. So you got to have that, not just the confidence, but you need the system in which you're doing those searches to be able to take them on and not sort of lose your cool,
Yeah, and going back to what you said earlier, you couldn't have added that value on a continuing basis because of the risk that 12 months in they go, oh, really sorry, Paul, but we've had to pull that account, or whatever it might be. Yeah,
it's like, we like you though. It's like, thanks. Yeah, and looking back,
we like you.
You're a nice guy. It's it's so cliche probably, but I've wasted so much energy over the last 18, 19 years on searches that led to nothing. And, I'm not in the, like, money's not number one, but, when you're not helping any candidate secure a role and you're not helping the client solve their issues, then it just gets really frustrating.
I can't think of, every time I hear, the more and more I learn about the Japanese market, the more I think it makes less sense than any other market that I have ever been involved with to work on a no-win, no-fee basis. It just doesn't seem to make any sense at all. But I totally understand that biggest fear that, well, if it is so difficult, which is obviously why it's so difficult to work on a contingent basis, or part of the reason, then why would you want to take a retainer? Because there's that whole risk that, you might not fill it. That's a journey that, I've been going on for several years and still am. Go on, George.
I always think the best places to position and sell retained solutions are probably markets where it's difficult to hire. And
100%.
Japan is one of them, right? I can't think of any Japanese recruiter I've worked with that hasn't been successful.
There's something I heard the other day that kind of validates this point, and that is, doing BD to a new client, a big company, HR had said they might have something really critical and senior coming up. Okay, what methods are you going to use? Oh, we're gonna use as many agents as possible, and we need to cast the net really wide on this one. Meanwhile, another client, competitor, I'm doing a search on retained last year, and they're saying that, and the role was aged. It had been open for too long. That's why they decided to retain it. And candidates were telling me that they had heard the role from 5 to 6 agents. So to hear that from the candidate experience, and then hear that comment from an HR head of a competitor, just shows that there's a massive gap in the market.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Ryan, because, I think some clients really underestimate how that can cheapen their reputation in the role. And when it's a market like anything, frankly, mid to senior, where there's such a limited number of candidates, if they hear about the same role 5 or 6 times, they're just like, well, what's wrong with that company? Or what's wrong with that company?
Yeah.
And best case scenario is then we got to go in and get a proxy statement and fight over ownership. And like, who wants to fight those battles, right? Unless it's, a name that's come up in previous workings in a briefing meeting, then okay, then it makes sense. That's much more strategic. But otherwise, it's just a waste of time and horrible branding to everyone involved.
Yeah.
What's your feeling then when you're taking on a project? Do you have that fear that you won't fill it, or how does that feel? Because that's a huge barrier for a lot of people and a reason why they wouldn't want to, work on a retained basis. Do either of you kind of have that same fear, or how do you approach that?
I think you have to be very clear about expectations. I mean, if, again, there could be a request we get, and I know there are less than, a dozen candidates, in that situation, I may not even want to take on a retained search. Maybe it depends. It depends on their flexibility and what happens if those 12 people or 10 people are not interested at all. So I just think you need to be very clear at the beginning with the client about expectations and limitations.
Yeah, me too. Yes.
And I think for me, the secret really lies in the diagnostic, which is something that I'm really prioritizing right now to get better at, to really empathize with that pain, because it's so easy to just skip the part about, the business and talent acquisition methods and just go straight into the pitch. It's so easy to do that. And so it takes a conscious effort, at least for me, to slow down and really ask myself, like, do I really understand the implications, the pain that the client's in right now? And then, I think in retrospect, if I would have done that better, there's a couple of retainers I wouldn't have taken on. the one without the timeline, where there was a couple internal candidates that I didn't propose to put through our competency assessment. So I'm very confident that the more that I practice that diagnostic and do role plays with my team, etc., that's where the secrets lie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with you both. It's about what happens if the ideal profile that they really want isn't possible to land right now. If that's a non-negotiable, or that's okay. We've done this and we've decided that actually, they're not ready. None of them are ready to make a move. That's fine. That's all we needed to do. I remember doing a search for SABIC and that was the case. And I was devastated because they didn't make a hire. And they were like, no, we just needed to know whether any of these people were ready, and they're not. And that's okay. You've done your job. Here's your fee. And that's cool. As long as they're okay with that, then that's cool.
And in some cases, it's been internal misalignment, and seeing firsthand how a batch of stakeholders, like having 4 stakeholders on the call, have a different opinion of what a part of the job description means, and they're looking at each other, and I'm trying to just keep a professional face, but seeing firsthand the chaos that is behind the scenes.
If you guys can't fill it on a retained basis, with given the space, the time, the partnership, the commitment, no one's going to fill it.
No one can. Yeah, that's it. We've got some questions. Aaron, we'd love those questions. Thank you very much. Here we go. Andre, has there been a time when you've converted a client to agree on a retainer that had up until that time was against retainers, and how did you do it? Interesting. Paul, you're nodding. We'll give this one to you. We'll come to you first.
Hey, Andre. Cheers for the question. There was one recently, late last year. There's a client I'd worked with for over a decade, and I've made, I don't know how many placements with them, 7 or 8 placements. Great client, great communication, and he had agreed in principle to a retained approach a couple of times, and we never got pen to paper. So what got us over the line in the end was just doing, like Ryan said, just doing a better diagnostic and understanding that for them, they're a law firm, it was this fear that they may get this amazing candidate dropping into their inbox, and giving us exclusivity under a retained approach would maybe put them at risk of paying 2 fees. So I just had to flex on that point and say, okay, look, we can take away that exclusivity if you're otherwise in agreement. And it's something, I think, just what you said before, Jordan. I mean, I'm backing myself and the team that we're still going to, find the people for them and make the placements. I mean, this particular firm they've never hired at this level in Tokyo in a long, long time. So the chances of them getting this, I'll take that risk on. It was just listening to them and digging a bit deeper, Andre. Probably overlooking something I'd been ignoring in the past.
Yeah, hey, Andre, great question. I had a case where a client had never used a retainer before for the level of role that we were proposing for. They'd only received 1 CV in 3 months. So the key line that helped us to get the HR head in agreement was, clearly the methods used so far haven't yielded great results.
Nice.
This is the way to that.
Can I just say,
Standard line from the training. We say that a lot, don't we?
Lawrence, who I think we all know is in the chat and has put, Ryan Shepherd is unreasonably good looking as usual. I'm assuming that Louise, Paul, and me, Lawrence, is just
all right. We're not
a bit further down as I scroll. I'm hoping, yeah.
I wouldn't be a party without Lawrence.
Hello, Ryan and Paul. Benjamin says, as someone's just starting out in retained recruitment, what common mistakes do new recruiters make, and how can they avoid them? Great question.
Yeah, I can chime in. I think it's being selfish and insecure that I need this more than the client needs this. And when we can slow down and go through that diagnostic, go through the 10-point plan of talking a bit about the person, how the business is going, how TA chimes in with that, then the position. But it's so easy to just go into the position to figure out if we have a candidate in our head or not, and then boom, we're in the contingency trap. again.
Yeah.
So slowing down and really learning how to, this gets me really excited because it's exactly what I'm working on right now, but really learning how to connect to the pain that clients. And something I've been doing recently is reconnecting with hiring managers of candidates I've placed years ago that may not have been on the retained, but I really want to get better at being in touch with the impacts that our placement, our completed searches are making, so that I can be better in tune with that in the future as well. So slow down, get really good at, learn to love diagnosing that pain with clients. I hope that doesn't sound preachy, because again, I'm working on this myself, but that's the one thing I'd say.
Yeah, that was brilliant advice. Really good.
Very good. What do you say, Paul? What biggest mistakes do people make, or did you make? Like, I can share so many I've made.
Oh, yeah, I've made a lot, but a couple of ones that come to mind immediately. One is, we've talked about within reason. I think it's easy to sort of get a retainer, to just be careful what you wish for. Like, do a proper diagnostic and before you decide to even raise that or suggest it. And because there's, the worse than having no retained work is having the wrong retained work, because that will go and cut into your sleep. And the other one is saying no. Like, I think too many recruiters, they may say they specialize in this area or that, but a lot of recruiters are just too general. And if that's your business strategy, fine. But I think find your niche and stick to it, and be very clear on what you do, and do it really, really well. So if a client, is offering you a retainer on something that's not in your wheelhouse, I'm not saying don't do it, but just think very carefully and ensure you can actually fill that before you take it on. Say no. It's very, very few recruiters, I think, in this market who say no to work, and more should do so.
Yeah, and that ties in with another. Someone was asking about how to get new clients to come to see the value in a retainer, and one of those is the credibility, giving a track record. And firms that don't even have much track record in retained search, but do have marquee placements that are relevant and that they've worked really hard on, and that they've really invested a lot of time and resources into, it still counts a lot. Saying, hey, we have a track record in the space. For example, this company, this was the challenge as a result, company challenge result, right? Just like STAR method for competency-based assessments and preparing our candidates for interviews. My strength is A, for example, B, for example. It can go a long way.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. What's the future for you guys? Paul, you've talked a bit about an evolution of your business, and the future for you, now that you're consistently winning, well, the most lucrative work you ever have won and closed. Where does this take you?
Thankfully, it gives me sort of clarity of mind, and also in our strategy to know what I can do and what I should be focusing on in terms of my sales, the clients I'm helping at the moment. But the next step would be to help our group, do better in this regard. We have our own internal metrics in terms of what we want to achieve as a group for retained work. It's not this quarter, it's going to be over the next 3 years. But yeah, there's a clear goal there that we want to, I can share it. We want to be 2/3 retained or exclusive, with like a real exclusive search with a sort of financial penalty across the group. So, and that doesn't mean sort of partner searches only. It could be head of legal, but it could be, compliance manager. It could be some sort of consultant. And this is going to take time, but that's the longer or the midterm goal.
How about you, Ryan? What's the future now that are you all working all retained now, Ryan, or is there still a bit of contingent work?
I'm only focused on retained now.
Retained. Yeah, well done.
Just kind of, I've intentionally brainwashed myself last year to anything that's not retained worthy, just to block it out and ignore it, essentially. Future vision, I'm a healthcare and life sciences recruiter, which is a huge industry in the world, in Japan, and it's a very important one for people's health as well, of course. But Japan's got a problem. We have an aging population. It's not the only country in the world with an aging population, but it is the most advanced aging population, and a low birth rate, which means the talent pool is getting smaller every day. So there's a big opportunity in Japan for healthcare and life science companies. The market is big. It's second or third largest in the world for most markets, but there's just not enough talent, and it's only going to get harder. So my vision is to take what I've learned and first share the principles and the processes with my team so that we can expand capacity to take on more searches, and then ultimately look for bigger and bigger problems. So, if we think about all the CEOs, the general managers, Japan presidents of all the, top US, European healthcare and life science companies in Japan, a clear trend is many of them are at or near retirement, in some cases past retirement, and their successors overdue. So whether we're replacing them directly or helping them find leaders that could be a ready in 2, ready in 5 GM, those are still high-level roles and searches. And in healthcare and life sciences, even though the market's industry is huge, the skill sets are relatively small because we're talking about oncology or immunology, and it gets very disease-oriented, which requires a search. And in Japan, usage of LinkedIn is only 4% of the population, compared to 50% in the US. So direct sourcing just doesn't work as well in Japan as it does globally.
No, of course it doesn't. Paul, what advice would you give to somebody listening to this if they want to take the first step to working on a retained basis and they're mainly contingent or all contingent at the moment? What's one piece of practical advice that you would give them?
Other than the obvious, like talk to you guys, seriously, I would say just start asking your clients better questions. Like when you're talking with your clients, this is not, tough stuff, but just like, what problems do you have right now? What have you tried? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Just dig in more to their business. What challenges do you see coming down the line? What where's the business going? People love talking about, we all love talking about ourselves. And then I think the next thing would be the business or our jobs. So I think ask the clients better questions. And I think people will be amazed at what comes out of just that simple practice.
Ryan, I'm going to slightly change the question for you.
All right.
What would you say to anybody listening to us today that has limiting beliefs, that thinks they can't do this or it's not right in the Japanese market?
And people do say that. Lots of people say that.
The fork in the road for me was when I heard someone say, there's 2 recruiters. One's working 15 jobs and fills 2 of them. And the other's working 5 jobs and 5 jobs exclusively and fills 4 of them. Which one do you want to be? You want to be, have the convenience of no commitment, but that comes at the cost of having unpredictable revenue, stress, that affects health, and it just cascades. So if you're working on contingencies right now and you're happy with the way things are going, great, all the power to you. If you're not and you want to discover a different way of working where you can get paid, you can enjoy it. And for me, one of the most fulfilling pieces is just being on steering calls with these decision makers, sharing with them what's going on in the market, answering questions factually, not my opinion, but factually, unless I'm asked for my opinion. So if that resonates with you, consume as much of the retrained search content that you possibly can until you or your company can, get you enrolled.
Yeah. We've just rolled out a new initiative as well. Oh, probably shouldn't talk about that. It's probably under wraps. Well, for those of you listening, we're just on our 90-day meeting as a team, and we've come up with a new initiative to help those people that want to self-fund through our training. That makes it much easier, because I know some people do. And Ryan, we would have worked together a lot earlier, I think, had we had that option. Looking back, what's one thing that you wish you'd known before making the change?
I'll leave this to Ryan, I think, first.
No, nothing, no surprises.
I should have known. I can share what that kind of aha moment was for me when I went from, I want to do retainers, but I know it's going to be so much work because these things never end. No, they can end. 3 weeks of outreach, 2 weeks of assessment, and it's possible that by week 4, we've exhausted the research just by executing a process, not by spending all night on LinkedIn spinning wheels. That's not how it is. It's following a process so that by week 4, we can say, all right, search is complete. Now it's time to walk the client and the candidates through the hiring process until the decision's made.
Yeah.
So it's time back, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I think for me, like which I think is really relevant for Japan, because I've worked in some very difficult markets. My perception was that when you take the retainer, you commit to filling the position, and realizing that that isn't the case, and actually you're committing to executing a process, just relieves so much pressure. I mean, yes, of course, we're all driven to get a result in the form of a placement if that's possible, but actually it might be that the client doesn't want to flex or doesn't want to, hire the next best thing. And if the best thing isn't available, they just decide not to. And that's okay. That's on them. That's their decision. That's not that I failed. I've still executed the process and put them in that position. And that's a huge mindset shift for me, and made me realize that actually I can take on pretty much anything, providing, like Paul says, you've done the diagnostic and the client is okay with either flexing or accepting that they aren't going to be able to make a hire because it won't be perfect. And if they don't want to flex, then that's okay. That's down to them.
Yeah, it's not that a person from us has to be appointed into the role for it to be a success. Like I had a search recently where the client had an internal candidate from the beginning. We proposed that we can take them through our assessment process, so they had a consistent and objective way of assessing candidates, which we did. And in the end, although they really liked the candidates I had put forward, they went for the internal candidate. But we still got a majority of the minimum. We still got a majority of the fee. I asked my counterpart there, can I get some feedback? Like, what was even though the successful candidate wasn't from us, what was the most valuable thing about this, and what about our service? And he said, Ryan, I could sleep well at night knowing that every step of the way you had everything under control, and that's thanks to all the tools and resources that I follow from Retrain Search, following the briefing meeting guide.
You're our new poster boy, Ryan, by the way, just saying.
It works. I mean, it's been such
a good looks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been such a burden off my shoulders. Like, I'm really passionate to share that with other people, and how when we trust the process, beautiful things can happen. And what the guy said was, Ryan, I could sleep well at night knowing you have everything under control, but we're using a Shrek firm in this other country, and I am not convinced they know what they're doing.
That's a whole different subject. Any final questions for us or Ryan or Paul before we let you go? We had a few earlier. Here we go. Moments ago, Ryan stated the gaps when a search has aged and past 4 or 5 agencies. What would be the takeaways for the agency that's now active on the search? Most of the prospects have already been approached and either assessed or have lost their interest.
Yeah, that's a good one. What would be the takeaways for the agency that is now active on the search? Okay, so my concern would be that the talent pool is small, right? Because at this kind of mid-senior level, let's say it's director in a big company, it's not mega senior, but it's not it's a little higher than mid-career. The talent pools in Japan are small, yes, but one of the beautiful things about a retainer is that the successful candidate can very often be completely different from the original spec, but they need to go through that journey, go through that pain, see the market and get the context and have that shared internally to be able to come to that conclusion. So that is the power of a retainer for search that has already been the market, because agencies might just be contacting all the wrong people.
Yeah, completely. And I completely agree. And the power of being able to show them all the people that have been, approached and are now not interested as a result, and therefore the ground that's left to cover when they see that. What I often experience, I don't know whether you guys have experienced this, is that when you take a retainer, it isn't necessarily that you find someone that the other agencies haven't. Like, sometimes you do because you've got more time and you can spend the time on it because you've got that financial commitment. But more often than not, you can drive the client to make a hire that they wouldn't have made on a contingent basis. They might have already seen that candidate or been aware of them or disregarded them because they thought they could get something better. Whereas when you lay it all out and take them through that process that you're describing, Ryan, and that guy saying, I can sleep knowing that you're turning over every stone and that the outcome's going to be the best. They then have complete confidence making that decision, even if it isn't exactly what they wanted. They know that it is the best they're going to get. Whereas on a contingent basis, of course, they never know that. They never know whether there could be something better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and one thing we've seen in Japan and also in some other markets where definitive is that, clients, especially HR people, but hiring managers will be, they will be told by recruiters that, we've gone over the market, we've approached all these people, but it's often not the case. Or it's if people can source using LinkedIn, InMail, whatever, good for them. But just because someone sent InMails to the whole market, it may not mean anything. And it may, 5 or 6 agencies looking at it, spamming the market with messages. It may take a retained approach, one agent to come in and, reach out personally, make those calls, do those meetings. People may have heard about this role, but they may not have considered it, seriously. So just because it's been open a while, it shouldn't. That's not a reason to necessarily walk away from it. But again, it comes back to the diagnostic and like Ryan mentioned, bringing data to the conversation. To do you know the market's been covered, or do you just think that because that's what recruiters have told you?
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Another thing, there's just so much power in the story, the employer value proposition. How many recruiters are really sitting down with the hiring manager and talking about, okay, I'm your ideal candidate for my competitor, and I'm going to uproot my whole life to come work for you. What would you say? How would you sell this? And to be able to tell that story so that when we do get that candidate who hasn't had time to take calls from all the contingent agents who called once randomly, we have that 30 seconds when they're, hopping out of the taxi to fetch their kids from daycare or whatever. We're able to say that story in a way that lights up a bulb. For me, that's really, really fun. And the client, one of my clients asked a candidate as well, like, so you're not actively looking, like, why'd you meet with us? And he's like, Ryan, the brief Ryan shared with me was so interesting. I had to find out if this was true or not. And of course it was true.
Sarah, Ryan mentioned a search process lasting 4 weeks, give or take. Would love to hear more insight on what steps or process you follow. Oh, great question. We have 6 minutes left, Sarah. So sadly, we can't go through all of the steps on a retained search process we would take. It will take us a little bit longer than that, as you would expect. But yeah, please book some time in. I think Aaron's been sharing a code. If anybody that's got questions that either doesn't want to ask them in this format, or if they want to speak to me, Ryan, Paul, will you be? I don't want to take up your time, but if anybody wants to reach out to you, how can people get hold of you? Can they reach out to you and ask questions? Are you happy with that?
Happy to. LinkedIn's best.
LinkedIn, amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Is that okay with you too?
Yeah, no, that's all good. That's all good. And just one thing, this is a bit of a plug for you guys, but I wanted to mention this because it's something I overlooked after I did the course initially was, your team teaches, how to win and how to execute on retainers, which is really, really valuable. But the part I initially missed was that there's also a huge amount of advice on business development that we should be doing along, at each stage of the retained process. And maybe it was just me, but I sort of missed that stuff first time around.
Everyone misses stuff. They watch it like 2 or 3 times and go, I didn't know that was in there. Have you changed it? I'm like, no, I haven't changed anything. I just kind of skip over. Like I think somebody said, was it you? Oh yeah, whatever. You listen to something and go, yeah, whatever. And then you move on and then you listen to it again and like, oh yeah, I probably should listen to that a bit more. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. I hear that so many firms are looking for a BD machine. Well, look no further than the sales module of retained search, because that's all it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And even thank
we'll
you.
transfer you the money later for the plug.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Even like, the delivery module, there's business development woven into and business development from a search that people overlook the first time, but it's the key to not having to go back to the beginning again with BD, that BD from a search. So yes. All right. So if you're ready, a lovely audience, to explore this transition, then please reach out to us or to Ryan or to Paul to find out more. We'd be delighted to help you, and hopefully some of the advice and tips shared today and the stories, more than anything else, has been inspirational and helpful for you. So just to take a minute to thank you, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. And to Ryan, thank you so much for being so transparent in what we know is a really small market. So we really appreciate you being kind enough to
really appreciate you.
Share. Yeah, and all the best for the future and the very exciting future of what's to come. I know that this is not the end. This is just the beginning, because of all the beautiful things that you can now do on a retained basis, like Ryan alluded to there, some pipelining, as Paul's starting to see in the mastery group, things like mapping and insight studies and competitor intelligence. And Ryan, you'll be in the mastermind soon, I know. And thank you to my fellow co-host, awesome star Jordan as well. So thank you, audience. We'll really look forward to speaking to you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Lou, Jordan.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Well, that's another episode of Retrain Search, the podcast in the bag. Thanks for listening to our wild tales, LinkedIn controversies, and our top tips on how to sell and deliver retained search. Get involved in our next episode. Send in your questions and share your experiences with us by emailing podcast@retrainedsearch.com. And don't be shy. Connect with us on LinkedIn and come and say hi. We don't bite. Unless you're a Shrek firm, that is. We want to say a special thank you to our retrained members for sharing what's working for them right now and innovating new ways to grow and evolve. It's an incredible community. If you're wondering what exactly we mean when we mention our communities, well, we have two separate programs. Our Search Foundations program is for recruiters who want to learn how to sell and deliver retained search solutions consistently. And we have our Search Mastery program. That's for business leaders or owners already at 50% retained or more and looking to scale and grow and structure their search firm. We cap memberships to these programs to protect the integrity of the community. If you want access, just talk to us. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back very soon with another episode of Retrain Search, the podcast.